Alright, so I wanted to make a video in House Flipper talking about the Breaking Bad house. So this is it. I mean, it's relatively boring. You've seen the movie, but I went ahead and did it, right? So I made it like this, like weird kind of Vampire the Masquerade-esque hideaway, right? And you'll see the inside here. I'll start. I chose really dark, kind of brooding colors for the living room, and you can get an idea of what I've done with it. I thought about putting a TV in there, but it was like, no. You know, you can use light to kind of to for emphasis, right? Because I offset the reds, the dark hardwood, and the blood red walls with with like gold fixtures, and it gave it this sort of regal appearance, and I kind of like that. I kept with the Breaking Bad theme and put the picture in the middle and made that kind of a centerpiece, right? Because I thought that was kind of neat. Looking around, I went with dark woods. It's not cheap, trashy vampire, right? It's like sophisticated vampire. And you know, you could use dark colors to emphasize sophistication. This is a really good way of doing that. I also used halogen lamps. And I used Roman curtains. I used a mixture of leathers, reds, blacks, and these are... I know what these are. These are saplewood. And I found some of the references kind of neat, and the secrets. This book came from the bathroom, and I think it was supposed to be the book that Hank was reading when he saw Walter White's note in there. But otherwise, it's like, you know, dark, brooding colors. But it contrasts well, right? And you can still create a kind of a neat space in a kind of a gothy sort of a thing, but make it look classy, right? So I went ahead and did that, you know, this little vampire hideaway, you know, because Walter White himself was sort of vampiric in a way, right? And I went ahead and, you know, added the oriental rugs. I didn't want to do too much with the dining room because, frankly, it didn't need a whole lot. As we move into the kitchen, I replaced the bar that they had with a smaller bar to open up the space, and I used, you know, obviously the crimson tiles in the middle to create juxtaposition between the lights and the darks, and then kind of break up the monochromatic color scheme. I added in a bunch of different appliances that were the right shade, once again blacks and whites, with gold to kind of add accents, as well as, you know, bringing color into the room besides the blood red and the black. You know, you want to make sure that you have a good set of color. Now, in the hallway, I debated putting up these posters, right? But I felt like it really went well with the theme, because you can't deny it. Like, you got Dance with the Dead posters, but they're the right theme, and definitely their album covers really add something to the space. So I decided to keep it. And the hallway is one of the areas I actually like the most, right? Is because it's very, if you've ever played like Vampire or something, you know, it's very Tremere. You remember that area with all the hallways, and it's kind of classy, but they seem to maze around. And, you know, going back into the bathroom, I once again did the crimson tile, but I added in a red rug. And then over here, I also added in a vanity that was black-white. I kept with the same theme, right? Very dark, brooding colors, but relatively open, and it's got utility to it, which was important, right? You don't want to have a vanity without having a shelf with the soap. You know, you gotta have a place to be able to set up, right? So I went ahead and did that. I moved the towel rack, or the actual radiator rack, higher up for that reason. And I also added in, once again, I added in these halogen lamps, because I think they provide some of the best light, as well as one of these fluorescent lights over the vanity. I tried to keep everything relatively simple, but add splashes of color and hints of, you know, of brooding darkness, so to speak, you know. Nothing too audacious. I tried to keep the hallway relatively free of portraits and things, unless they really went with the theme. So I went ahead and found some things online that looked like they would go with what I was trying to thematically create. And they still went with, you know, the dark furniture and everything else, so, you know, I thought it went over really well. And going in here, this was the money room, so this was where Walter White hid the money. And underneath this rug, there's a hole in the floor that I covered up with a grate. And you can see when I'm looking at it that it hints at something, right? And I pulled the money out of there. Spoiler alert, there's money in there if you do buy the house. And closing that door, I've got the water heater that Walter White installed, you know, the really high-tech one from the show. And then I also put I made it into a laundry room instead. Because they had the laundry attached to the kitchen, right? And I didn't like that. Once again, I like contrast, so I used the black and the white wall contrasted with the red. You see this all over the house, right? White walls, red, black and white. And everybody said this was the worst wallpaper, but I actually thought it went very well contrasting with the blood red walls. Amazingly well, in fact. And you can see this same layering technique all over the house, right? Except here where I did a backsplash with the textured tiles. And they're kind of raised, and then once again you have the same kind of lights that you see in the bathroom underneath the cabinets, because it provides more light. Once again, another hanging fixture with, once again, more halogen lamps, because they provide amazing light and they provide a good contrast. So this was the living room. Now there was a little thing here, but in addition to the wall, that was brick, and I knocked it out because I just thought it was useless. But otherwise, I haven't changed the structure of the house at all. This is the house. This is the master bedroom. I did a lot of the same things here. Once again, you've got that wallpaper with the black and the white and the blood red walls. Black curtain. A light fixture hanging, but California king-size bed with the lamp and a plant. And this was the bathroom. Now, they had this bathroom painted like this, but theirs had blue tiles instead of crimson. I changed them to the crimson, obviously keeping thematically with what I was trying to do. You know, I looked at utility and I changed out the lighting for a hanging fixture here. Gives it a darker, broodier kind of an atmosphere, and I like the way this turned out. So, yeah. And once again, very similar to the other bathroom, except 2 sinks and a toilet sticking out of the door. Everything kind of matches color-wise and thematically. I could have created a little more... I could have broken up the color a bit by maybe adding a splash of yellow or something like that, which would have contrasted nicely, but I didn't feel like I needed contrast, so I just didn't do it. Now, there is a room, an office that I created in here. It's got a bed in it and a table. And I went with a kind of cyberpunk theme for this room. And you can see what I did. Once again, the light that adds a lot. It's busier, kind of a flow. You've got the desk with the keyboard and the monitor, but the flow is broken up by the colors. This is a very bright red with some very geometric shapes in the wallpaper. Once again, to try and break up the color. You know, you don't want it just to be red. And I once again did the edges of the windowsill in white. Once again for contrast, with black curtains. So there's a black and white and kind of a red theme in here, whereas it's a blood red in the other room. But this is also a very cyberpunk kind of a thing. And you get that from this. Everything's kind of new, everything's modern, you know, very abstract and kind of colorful, right? And I think this room does pretty well. Even in the lighting fixture that I used. In a whiteboard as well, because that's something you would need. I tried to keep it busy, but not too busy. And I found that the more I added, the more I ended up having to take away. I kept all the same flooring throughout the entire house, so nothing changed there. And that's basically it. There were still a couple of elements that the house came with that I kept, like the pink floating thing in the pool from the movie, from the show. I mean, it still looks like the house. They did a very good job of replicating it, to a certain extent, right? I don't think it wasn't entirely accurate, because the actual layout of the house has the garage opening up from the other side of the door, outside. And I'll show you that. So the door leads inside here into the house, and on the actual architecture, the door to the garage leads here. So yeah, they kind of got that wrong. And the other, at the end of the hallway, over here, instead of this being the garage, this was actually the kids' room. But yeah, I think it looks good. I think it looks great. You know, it's kind of dark, it's broody, but it's also sophisticated. You know, very a vampire hideaway, right? Let me know what you think.